If you stay at Grand Canyon, there's abundant information about the history of Bright Angel Lodge, designed by Mary Colter and opened in 1935 as a less expensive alternative to 1905's El Tovar Hotel. Bright Angel has numerous detailed written descriptions, old photos, and even a history room. But absent is any meaningful information about Maswik Lodge. So here's a quick quiz comparing Maswik Lodge to Bright Angel. Which is older? Maswik, it opened in 1926, while Bright Angel opened in 1935. Which has served more people? Maswik, both in time of operation and number of rooms available. Which has buildings designed by famed Mary Colter? Both. Questions remain if Colter designed all of the original Maswik cabins, because Colter was a designer, not an architect, so her name does not appear on the original plans, although they're in her rustic style. But clearly in 1939, a number of Colter-designed cabins were built at Maswik. This is one here. They used to be the cheapest accommodations in the park, and I stayed in them several times, although they've now become employee housing. You'll note the design is identical to the classic Bright Angel cabins. In contrast, these are the Bright Angel Colter cabins. They're repainted, re-roofed, carefully curated, and treated like treasures, while the Maswik cabins, exactly the same, are treated like trash. Finally, where did I stay on my first visit to Grand Canyon in 1970? Maswik Lodge. I was 11 then and drove cross-country with my parents and older brother. A funny story is, along the trip, I found out that my father had borrowed $2,000 from the bank to pay for the trip. I imagine he was none too pleased when I told him, "You should have bought a new car instead." Coincidentally, my father kept that cash money in his wallet. He'd sleep with his wallet and a loaded gun under his pillow. He was a blue-collar worker, and those were different times, but it says something about the guests at Maswik. So, why is the history of Maswik missing? I have a simple explanation: elitism. El Tovar served the upper class. Presidents, royalty, and movie stars stayed at El Tovar. Bright Angel was built as a less expensive alternative, but it served the merchant class. Maswik served the working class. While Bright Angel has been preserved in a time warp, Maswik was a workaday accommodation, and the buildings have been demolished and replaced with little thought about their historic significance or of the people they served. Maswik was built to serve the emerging group of visitors who drove cars, and it was originally called the Auto Camp. The lodge was built next to a new free campground that provided firewood, picnic tables, and flush toilets to campers. It was located right over here. The lodge originally had a large covered patio with a fireplace to which campers could retreat in inclement weather. The lodge provided campers with services like a cafeteria, general store, and newsstand. It also rented cabins. The park superintendent at the time laudably noted, quote, "Unless everything possible is done for motor campers, we are not serving the class of people for whom the parks are primarily intended, those of moderate means," close quote. And he said that it was especially gratifying to build and expand facilities for this new market. I wish that same attitude existed today. The free campground and the Maswik Lodge were built to serve the working class. Following through on the superintendent's edict to serve people of modest means, between the lodge and the campground was an outdoor amphitheater for ranger presentations. That area is right behind me. It's a place that thrilled me when I went there on a summer evening in 1970. The topic I don't remember, but I recall a fire and the exciting night atmosphere. Here are the converging paths that led to the amphitheater area that served both the auto cabins and the campground. Maswik originally opened in 1926 with a lodge building and a handful of cabins. Those original cabins still exist right across from the current lodge building. You can see from a photo of the original cabins, it did have a bit of a rough and tumble appearance. The current Xanterra description incorrectly lists the start date of Maswik as 1927 and incorrectly lists the construction dates of the hotel rooms. To me, this is indicative of a careless treatment of a lodge that served multitudes of working class visitors, including me, my father, and his wallet full of borrowed money, making the Great American Road Trip happen. I don't find that respectful. Another problem for someone wanting to research Maswik's history is that its name has changed repeatedly over the years. For most of its history, it's had auto or motor in its name, reflecting its intended purpose to serve drivers, not train riders. It started as the Fred Harvey Auto Camp, but was also called the Fred Harvey Motor Lodge, Auto Camp Lodge, Grand Canyon Cabin Camp. There have been lots of names of this property. Maswik is allegedly named after a Hopi deity that guards Grand Canyon, but there's no mention of the term anywhere in the literature other than on the hotel itself. A funny story is that for a while it was called Mushwhip Lodge. That's right, Mushwhip. One can imagine how it got its name. They asked a Hopi employee what the name of the kachina was. He said Mushwhip. Spell it, Mushwhip. Okay, that's our name. Now I guess that name didn't help sales, and a concerned manager manipulated the spelling into the more appealing Maswik. Now neither the term Mushwhip nor Maswik appears anywhere in the literature or on the internet other than as a name for a Grand Canyon hotel. That's puzzling. I've both written and voicemailed the Hopi tribe to ask if there's such a name, but they've elected not to reply. Sometimes tribes are hesitant to discuss deities with outsiders. But here's a possibility. I once had a Navajo roommate in college, and when the city directory asked for the names of residents of our rentals, we had great fun using Navajo curse words to name each of the imaginary residents. And to our amusement, they published the curse words in the city directory, which you could access at the time in the library. I don't know if this happened with Maswik or if the name is just made up, but it's found nowhere other than on the lodge. Maswik only rented cabins until the late 1960s when there were as many as 150. That's where I stayed in 1970, but a number were torn down and a series of hotel rooms were built, eventually called Maswik South. They were cheap and I stayed there a lot until they unceremoniously tore them down, replacing them with the new Maswik South, which opened in 2022. Starting in 1976, they also built the Maswik North rooms, where I stay most frequently nowadays. The dates offered in the printed materials are wrong, but this photo establishes that construction occurred in 1976. The rooms nearest the trails where I stay have plumbing fixtures dated 1979. The year of the reception building and food court is often reported as 1983. I'm unsure of that. The only things retained from the 1926 original lodge are the stone pillars, which you can find outside of the current pizza pub. Architectural reviews conclude there's nothing noteworthy about Maswik Lodge, but I find the stonework on the benches out front artful and the soaring ceilings in the food court pleasant. Although built too late to be Mission 66 or mid-century modern, the food court area does retain contemporary touches that make it noteworthy to me, although clumsy attempts to update the style do diminish its significance. The Maswik rooms are nothing to write home about, but they do serve the purpose of housing countless visitors to Grand Canyon, including me, over a 54-year period. Santara recently raised the room rates on the standard Maswik North room from $225 last year to $369 currently, taking these rooms out of the reach of the working class people they were intended to serve. One has to wonder what this company and what the National Park Service is doing in approving these room rates. But that's outside of my control. I hope I filled you in on a few details about the missing history of Maswik Lodge, a facility designed to serve people of modest means that, in my opinion, has not received the respect it deserves. Thank you for watching.